want to start out just by saying some thank yous, and this is always dangerous when you start thanking people because probably we'll miss somebody, but there are just a few people specifically that I really want to thank, that we want to thank specifically. Yes? Am I not on? Am I on now? Okay, sorry. Yeah, the battery's good. I flipped the switch the wrong way. All right. So there are a few thank yous that I want to make publicly. So hopefully you will also join with me in thanking these people. But first of all, Heidi, as our secretary, went way above and beyond the call of duty and her job description to do so much work to make this all happen, and with pulpit supply and communication there, and just amazing work. So thank you, Heidi, for all that extra work that you did. Greatly appreciated. Vaughn and Sherry are our Christian, professed Christians, and like 99% of those are Greek Orthodox. So, in fact, Greek Orthodox is kind of synonymous with being Greek. We talked with we went to an evangelical church and met with a pastor there, and he said that many people who have left the Greek Orthodox church to join the evangelical church there, they're treated as if they have left the family. You don't belong. You're not part of the Greek Orthodox church. You're not Greek. So they experience some persecution even as evangelicals. But so in that baptistry, there is and every place we went, monasteries, everything is covered with this kind of art everywhere. And it's all the same type, style, everywhere you go. So you can just kind of, these are all, stories from the Bible. There's Paul and Silas in jail, Paul and Silas, coming out of jail. That's what we saw everywhere we went in Greece. So that was Philippi. Anything you want to? This is also this is in the ancient city of Philippi. There's a theater where Paul most likely was. On the left-hand side, you see sort of a road there. That's the Via Ignatia, Ignatia, they say. So that's the road that came from Neapolis. Paul would have traveled on that road.
I'll say a little something about that.
Yes, please do.
Is this mic on? Okay. So this road was part of the Roman road system, which I just think is so cool. Like thousands of miles of road the Romans built. And in God's sovereignty, right, we know that this is God's hand in doing this because those roads were built, the gospel could be carried. Like Paul walked thousands of miles on these roads. And the terrain, if the roads were not there, is mountainous, it's swampy in places, like it would be very treacherous to walk through. It already was dangerous because there were robbers and stuff like that, but in God's sovereignty, these roads were built in just the right time for the gospel to go forth. So this is, if you've heard of the Roman road system, this was one of the roads that was part of that.
Yeah. It was one of just a stone that says the Via Ignatia, the Roman or the Ignatian road. One of the things that really struck us in our time there was the mountainous, how mountainous it was there. And you think of Paul making all these travels, and if it weren't for those roads, it would have been impassable. But even with the roads, it's remarkable that they traveled as much as they did. 90 miles from Philippi is Thessalonica, which was the next place that Paul went on his second missionary journey. This is the city of Thessalonica. Now, Philippi, the ancient city, there's no modern city on the ancient city. So they can excavate all kinds of stuff. Thessalonica, there's a modern city. Thessaloniki is right on the ancient city. And so there's only parts. You can see how the modern city is right around the ancient ruins here, which is very interesting because they said in places like this, you might buy property and start to dig, to build a house, and you start building for a foundation, and if you run into ancient ruins, you lose your property. You're done. It doesn't matter. You don't get repaid for that. That goes right over to the state, and they take over with digging and excavating and that kind of stuff. Thessalonica or Thessaloniki, they were going to build a subway, started digging, hit ruins, no subway. That's it. So you can see just some of the ruins here. A lot of Thessalonica had these arches. Everything. So this is from the Roman period. Rome kind of didn't invent, but they perfected the arch system. And so they could take where things were mountainous or hilly, and with these arches, they could build flat surfaces by building on top of those arches. And so that's Thessalonica. Those are their baths, okay, public bath. People would go there, and you can see the hole. That's where they stick your feet in. So that was Thessalonica. On our way next, we passed this mountain. It's not a very good picture because it was hazy, but can you see the mountain that's in the back? That's Mount Olympus. Mount Olympus, if you know anything about Greek mythology, Mount Olympus is the mountain where all the gods lived. This is where Zeus, Hermes, and all those, this is where they lived. It was the mountain of the gods, their holy mountain. It was amazing. In Thessalonica, you can see this mountain over the bay, and it just kind of comes out of nowhere. And you think, if you're standing in Thessalonica, you can see why they might think this is the gods live there, because it just comes out of nowhere, this big mountain. So that's Mount Olympus there. All right, this was Michelle's absolute favorite thing that we did. It was very cool. You want to talk about this?
Sure. So this was not necessarily a biblical site stop. This was more historical. This is the tomb of Philip II of Macedonia, who was Alexander the Great's father. I think it was so exciting for me because of the story of the person who found it. He was an archaeologist, and Philip II was like his hero. He wanted to be just like him, and he made it his life's work to find Philip II's tomb. He found it in his 80s. Can you imagine, your whole life, you have looked for something, and you find it when you're 80. So he had the wherewithal. This is the front of where Philip II was buried. But instead of going in the front, he came in from the top. So now at this site, it's a museum, and you can walk down some steps and just be right here. You can just see it. So in the tomb and then in the area, there's also resting places of other royalty. We're going to see just the treasures they found in there, which are just fabulous and exciting, beautiful, pure gold crowns, and what's the name of the boxes where they find the bones? Mausoleum? Is that the right word? I don't know.
Like that.
But look at that. That's fabulous and beautiful. I don't know. It was just so exciting. So we saw...
That's a crown there. So look at the intricacies of that crown, all gold.
I mean, ancient Greece, you think they're not technologically sound, right? They're ancient. But just the beauty of what they created. This is ceremonial armor and a shield. Way too big to actually carry into battle. But again, found in this tomb here. Here's another one that would maybe belong to, well, I don't have them straight, but
yeah, I don't
There were other royalty buried there too. So some were princes, princesses, queens.
This is like Indiana Jones. Have you ever watched Indiana Jones? You know, you'd like looking for those treasures. This is like Indiana Jones multiplied.
Yeah.
Like the treasures they found there. Just incredible.
beautiful.
Joni, you have a question? No, just the bones. Bones. So the box is probably 2 foot. They're just, I mean, the bones are taken apart and placed. I don't know if they put all the bones in there, but
I don't know the answer to that. No.
I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. You come along next time and ask that question. That would be perfect. So, yeah, so that was
There
an
was
amazing,
a lot more we saw.
yeah,
There was a lot more
it was an amazing place.
Yeah.
After that, we went to Berea. You might know of Berea in Book of Acts. There's not much in Berea, but just a couple of, there's like a monument place with a couple of these things just saying that Paul was there ministering. So that wasn't much there. It was kind of cool. Then we went to, this is also not a Bible place, but it's called Meteora. And the place is incredibly beautiful because it's all things like you see here, just these huge rock formations. The amazing thing is that back, I don't even remember the date that they gave, but somewhere way back, monks decided to make use of these mountains, these big rock formations, and so you can see the caves in there. They would go up to the caves and they would live as monks. But then they started to do more than just live in the caves. They started to build, and you can see kind of up in the right-hand corner, just below the trees, you see a little structure there. So they started to build. There we go. Thank you, Renee. But now, and so look what they ended up building up on these rock formations. And that right there is one of 7 huge monasteries like this, up on top of these rocks. Some of them, there is no way to get up there except by pulley. So they have no idea how these monks did it, how they built it. It's remarkable. We could get up there by bus, and it's hard to see, but there's actually there's 2 monasteries here in the front, and then there's one in the back, and there's one in the way back. I think you could actually see 4 of them from that picture. Just beautiful. But look at that. How do they even build that? That's crazy. So we really enjoyed. We got to go in one of the monasteries. We're like, that wasn't so exciting. Let's just look at the outside. Beautiful.
There are 2 active monasteries
Yes.
right now.
Yep.
So they're actually monks living there. And in the Greek Orthodox Church, women can be monks too. They're just called monks. They're all monks. And so, yeah, they're still active and working. And
Yep. Very
there.
interesting.
Yep.
Then we went on to Athens. So this is Athens. This is the view from our from the roof of our hotel. You see that big hill there. Athens has 7 hills. The one that you see is the biggest of the hills in Athens. The most famous is the Acropolis, which is actually right behind it. You might be able to see, if I had that laser pointer, I would show you, but you can see like a kind of a bright spot down the side of the hill. That's actually, you could see the very top of the Parthenon right there. But there's these 7 hills. So you have this major hill, you have the Acropolis, you have the Areopagus, which we will see in just a second, but there's 7 hills in Athens. So there's the most famous of all of them. This is on the Acropolis. That's the Parthenon. The Parthenon is a temple to the god Athena, goddess Athena. that's where the name Athens comes from. That's their main god. But on the Acropolis, there's all these other temples and buildings of worship. And this here is, I don't remember the name of the structure, but you can see all those statues, those pillars, and those all represent conquered peoples. And so it's all over there on the Acropolis. But there's the Parthenon that everyone wants to see. It was so busy there. We were so glad we were one of the first groups that got to go, because it's just packed with people. It was blazing hot. But that's the Parthenon. It's huge. And you think that was a temple to the god Athena. One of the things that struck me as both of us as we spent this time there, we're going to all these places, and it's like, wow, this is so amazing. It's so beautiful. Paul would have seen this and said, what an abomination. What an abomination this is, to worship these pagan gods. And so you can see a few other structures up there, and those are other temples to other gods behind there as well. Now this is standing on the Acropolis, looking down on the Areopagus or Mars Hill. And so that's one of the other hills, and this is famous because Paul met with the Areopagus. Now there's some question, we learned this when Dr. Weinberg, we were standing on Mars Hill, and he was explaining to us that Paul may not have actually been on that hill when he was talking to the Areopagus. That may have just been a meeting down in the city. But anyway, it was fun to be on the Areopagus. This is from the Areopagus looking at the Acropolis, and there's all those other temples that you can see there. That's me on the Areopagus, pretending this is where Paul was standing. It's kind of cool. And now this is from the Areopagus, looking at down below is what's called the Agora, or in Roman they would call it the Forum. This is the city center, the ancient city center. That long building that you see on the side is actually a covered sidewalk, and this was something that was rebuilt to make it look like it would have looked in those ancient times. And this would have been a place where there would be shops set up in there, and just a place where people could spend their time and do some shopping. And there are some like museums down there. You can see this is at that. It's called a stoa, but it's a covered stairway with beautiful columns. So anything you want to say on that, Michelle?
No, we learned some things about the columns and the engineering, but our brains aren't engineering brains. So it is really, again, just so fascinating what they're able to do without the technology that we have today, and that so much of it is still standing because of just how smart they were.
Speaking of still standing, this is the most well-preserved Greek temple in Greece. It was right there in Athens, in that Agora area. Again, another temple to another god, very well preserved, beautiful. But again, would have been that's what we were dealing with. It was hot. It was sunny. It was quite something. It was hot. It was just hot. This is going to Corinth. This is called the Corinth Canal. Corinth is right by, if you look at a map of Greece, there's one area where the land is only 4 miles wide between bodies of water. This is just a canal that joins those waters. Not an ancient one, but it was built like in the 1800s, I think. That was kind of cool. They had tried to, they had started to build it like earlier than that, but this is Corinth. I loved Corinth. That hill in the back is the Acropolis of Corinth. Every city would have an Acropolis. Acropolis was like their holy mountain. And so we're standing in the ancient city center, the ancient agora, looking there at the Acropolis in the background. This just struck me. Like that was, as they're going about their business in the city center, that's what they're always seeing, this holy mountain. And this is up on top of the Acropolis. I mean, it's, so you see the wall, it's like a fortress. This is not because people live there. This is because this is where their temples are. And it is like, that was what they held that as so sacred, nobody was going to get in there unless you were actually, from Corinth and worshiping their gods. But this is down below, and there are temples down there as well in the city of Corinth. This is standing on top of what's called a bema. Bema was a place where pronouncements would be made, judgments would be made, and in Corinth, we're told in Acts that Paul went before the tribunal and received judgment there, and that judgment probably happened at this bema. This is standing below that platform, so very likely Paul was standing right down here as he's being judged according to this tribunal there in Corinth. There's a street that goes into Corinth, and on the side of that, so you can see the street is there in the middle, and you can see there were all these smaller shops along the side. Paul spent time in Corinth with Priscilla and Aquila, who were also tent makers. Possibly Paul was set up shop in one of these shops or something very similar to it right there in Corinth. So that was very cool. Again, just an imposing mountain in the back as their holy mountain. We got to have we went back to Athens, had a dinner at a restaurant on a rooftop with that in the background. That was our view as we had dinner together with the Parthenon there. So this is just kind of a fun story. We were coming out of that restaurant, and the streets in Athens are very narrow. We had a bus. There was a car illegally parked, so we were stuck. We could not turn the corner. There was no place we could go. And so they had called the cops. The cops had gotten a hold of a tow truck. We're waiting for that tow truck. The car that was in front of this car that was illegally parked moved. And so Dan was like, we got to move that car. We're going to move that car. Let's go. Let's move that car. And so 4 of us hopped out, and there's more of you in the front. Yeah, and then so there were 4 of us that got off the bus to try to move it, but in God's good providence, there was a whole group of young people coming down the street at the same time, and it was guys,
and strong, young people.
So these guys, and there's a bunch of girls, so they want to show off. Yeah, let's move this car. So we moved the car, and the bus was able to go on its way. It was a lot of fun.
Can you imagine being that car owner and coming
yeah.
seeing it in a different place?
Wait, I didn't park here. Yeah, it was fun. We then got to go on a 3-day cruise in the Aegean Sea. Our first spot was a place called Mykonos. It wasn't really all that impressive, but this is a picture from Mykonos. This is their street. So you see stuff like this in the movies, just all these white buildings just packed close together and very touristy, though. Then we went to Ephesus. This is Ephesus. So impressive is Ephesus. We're standing at the beginning of the road, and it goes downhill, and you can kind of see how it winds through there. And it's so well preserved in so many ways because there's no modern city there, and I'll explain that in just a second. But as you're going down this road, it's just, there's some government buildings, but it's just, this was the temple to this god, and here's a temple to that god. Here's one of the...
Can I say one thing
Yes.
go back to that picture? So up further on the hill where this picture is taken from, then there were like government buildings. The proconsul's building would have been here. I don't know if you're going to say that later. But just keep this in mind when we get to a further picture.
Yep. So there was a temple here. So you see those arches. That's actually the foundation of the temple, and the temple would have been 3 stories on top of that. I think it was, I don't know if it was Apollo, but it doesn't matter. Just,
do you remember, Dan? No.
Anyone know what those are? Those are your toilets, ancient toilets. Yep. Yeah. This is one of the coolest things there in Ephesus. It's the front of what was an ancient library, and very well preserved, and just beautiful, beautiful structure. One of the things that we learned about the library is how could they tell that it was a library? It was if it was double walled like this. You can see I'm actually looking in between 2 walls. These are the outside walls of this library, and they would double wall it to keep the moisture out, to protect the books. So I just thought that was cool. That's how they know that it's a library. Beautiful structure. And then one of the last things we saw there is this theater. Massive structure. This theater is actually mentioned in Scripture. We got to spend some time, Dr. Wyma down there at the bottom, teaching us this about this story that's in the book of Acts 19, about a riot that happens in that theater, where the people of Ephesus are upset because Paul, Silas are teaching the gospel, and so they're rioting, and they're screaming out, "Great is Artemis of the Ephesians." Maybe you remember that story. Artemis was their god, where Athena was the god of Athens. Artemis was the goddess of Ephesus, and so they're screaming out, "Great is Artemis of the Ephesians," and we're told that the proconsul comes running, or he comes to that.
Because he can hear it.
He can hear it. He can hear the riot. So this is way down at the bottom of that street that we saw. The government building's way at the top, and you can just picture it. He's hearing this riot go on, and he comes running through that street to try to settle things down at the theater. You can see Michelle down there in the white shirt on the stage, blue skirt, and I was up top taking the picture. The road on the right there, you see that the road stops? That's where the sea used to be. Ephesus was a port city. Now Ephesus is 4 miles away from the port city because of silting from the river, which is a wonderful thing for us, because it means that a modern city is now built on the port, and nothing has been built on this ancient city of Ephesus, so it's still all there and still being excavated. Just beautiful. So that was Ephesus. Yeah, we gotta keep moving. This is Patmos. Patmos is the island where John was exiled, where he saw the visions of Revelation. There's a cave there. I don't think it really was where he wrote it, but it was kind of interesting. But it's beautiful. Island of Patmos. Then we went to Crete. In Crete, there's biblical things that happen in Crete. We did not do any of the biblical things there, but we went to this site, which is an ancient Minoan site. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the Minoans are just the earliest Greeks, and this was a very, very ancient site then, probably, what did we say, around the time of Abraham. Mm-hmm. But the archaeologist who found this made the decision to build some of it up so that we could see what it actually looked like then. A lot of archaeologists think that's a no-no, and they won't do that, but this guy wanted to do that for our benefit so we could see. So, yeah, again, just the history teacher in me found that just so fascinating, again, what they were able to do 1,700 years before Christ, and how they were able to live, and it was just really fascinating.
This was on the cruise. We were on our way to Santorini. I got a bunch of pictures of Santorini. I'll kind of go through this quickly, but Santorini is this, you can see the buildings up on top there with black cliffs. It was an old volcano, ancient volcano that had blown, and it just blew this, so everything is these black cliffs. Beautiful, and this is on the way up. Let's see, where was it? Here. Do you see that zigzag road going up? It's actually a mule track, steps that go up, and a number of our group who went there's gondolas that you can take up to the top, but a few of us took that mule track up, and so this is on the way up 600 steps. There's the mules going down the track, but just it was absolutely beautiful. So here you can kind of see the ring that it makes up there, because it was a volcano that blew and then filled in with water. So you can see the track as it goes down. A lot of steps. That was fun. It's just incredibly beautiful with the black, and the pictures aren't so great. I was using my old phone, but black cliffs with the white buildings. All right, then we went on to Spain. So yeah, we'll fly here. But and Renee and Jenna joined us in Spain. We spent some time with Sol, who you'll remember. We'll see a picture of her in just a second. But we did some day trips. This was at a place called Segovia, and Roman aqueduct, ancient Roman aqueduct that we saw there. Old cathedral, ancient cathedral, just beautiful. Castle that we saw there. Yeah. One of my highlights was when in Spain, Michelle and Renee and I did a mountain hike, it was over 3 miles, and this was the top of our hike, looking out. That was just an incredible thing.
Yeah, Sol lives down in that valley, so
Yes.
that we were staying with her.
There's Sol. We got to watch her play volleyball, so that was fun. Another monastery that they have right by their house in Spain, old cathedral. We got to tour some of these places. This is in Madrid. This is a famous square that's in a lot of movies too. So that was fun. So that was our time, and we did a lot more in Spain. Just don't have pictures of it all. After being in Greece and Spain, then we were home for a couple of weeks. Then Michelle and I drove out to Montana. We spent over a week there, almost 2 weeks in Montana for a wedding of our niece, and then family reunion. So one of the things that Michelle and I did was take the Badger across the lake to get out there. I've never done that before, so that was fun. At our reunion, we stayed in a lake house. This was the view from the backyard of our lake house at our reunion. It was incredible. Renee and her cousin won our cornhole tournament that we do as a family, so that I just thought I'd show you that. On our way back, we stopped at Waldrug, of course, and then went through the Badlands. So just thought you'd want to see that. That's beautiful. If you've never gone through the Badlands, that's incredible. We spent some time then a few weeks later. Michelle and I had a week down in Indiana, Kentucky. We stayed in a place in Indiana, then went to the Ark Encounter one day, went to the Creation Museum another day. Don't have a lot of pictures there, but I would just recommend, if you have an opportunity to go to the Ark Encounter Creation Museum, it's a great experience. If you only have one day to go there, go to the Ark Encounter, spend the whole day there. If you have 2 days, do the Creation Museum first. You only need probably a long morning there. and then go to the Ark Encounter the next day. But really, really a lot of information, wonderful information, very biblically sound, I believe, and very helpful. Michelle loved it as the Bible teacher in her. I loved it as well. So, boy, we did so many other things, but those were our trips, and I want to start with that. Any questions on that? Jim?
Greece has the whole pantheon, and all these people, all these gods that they worship. Is there any of that left? I mean, is there still an Artemis or an Apollo temple? It's just completely gone.
That's completely gone. Completely gone. I mean, 99% is Greek Orthodox. Now, one of the things that struck me, and I want to be careful on how I say this, because I don't want to put down brothers and sisters in Christ. But as we were going through all these Greek monasteries with all of their icons and pictures and symbols and the way that they venerate those things, it made me sad, because I thought, in some ways, all they've done is replaced their images of Apollo with all these other images. And they haven't, I don't want to say they're not worshiping the one true God, but Paul said we worship a God who does not live in temples made by hands and is not worshiped in that same way. And yet, here they are, and they just, everywhere you look, it's covered with pictures, and that's so beautiful.
They have a really low view of Scripture.
Very low view of Scripture.
And really not a relationship with God.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So,
which is sad.
Yeah. It felt empty. We both said that. The Greek Orthodox stuff felt empty. Any other questions on our trips? I want to just talk very quickly, if I can, about some of the other things that I did, because I've said this wasn't just about the trips. I could talk all day about the stuff that I learned, but I want to tell you, I've mentioned to some of you in evening service, mentioned some of the projects that I worked on. I did some voice audio recording. I did an audio recording of all of the Heidelberg Catechism, the Belgic Confession, and the Canons of Dort. Just something for fun, but also just a way for me to be in those confessions again. I absolutely loved it. I've now taken those and I'm starting to put them on Spotify. So it's actually like a podcast out there. So if you want to, you can just type in, if you use Spotify, it's also on Apple Play or Apple Music, Apple Podcasts, that's what it's called, and YouTube. And you can just type in Belgic Confession, Todd Kuperus, and it'll come up with these audio recordings. If any of you like technology and would want to help me at all put some of that stuff, because it just takes some work to get it all online. That's an ongoing project for me, but that was something that I worked on and just really enjoyed it. I also, every day I would begin the day with the Valley of Vision prayers. And I would take one of those prayers of the Puritans, which I've used before in worship services, and I would pray that prayer by writing it out, but sort of adapting the language a little bit, modernizing it a little bit. I didn't put it in my own words, just adapted. And that was so powerful for me. And then I would take that prayer as I had written it, and I would read it throughout the day. And I would kind of pray it in different ways. Pray for it, first of all, for me. Then I'd pray it for Michelle. I'd pray it for my family. I'd pray it for our church. And it was really, really powerful. I would highly, highly recommend something like that. So I've also been making voice recordings of those prayers that I've written, because I thought maybe it'd be a blessing to the church family. I'll make those available, both written and audio version. So I love to hike, so I did a lot of hiking on our sabbatical, mentioned the mountain hike that we did. I also did another mountain hike in Spain, which was 4 miles long. I've done some in the area, went to Cadillac Trails, did 10 miles on the Cadillac, like walked the whole thing, which is 10.85, almost 11 miles hiking there. Just absolutely love that. I did a lot of reading, read 11 books during the summer, a few fiction, but mostly nonfiction books, and then read a lot of scripture. I read Romans 8 times because I want to do a sermon series on Romans. I listened to probably over 50 sermons in Romans, just dove into Romans. And one of the reasons is because I want to do a sermon series, and I was like, that's too big. I don't know how I'd have the time to focus on Romans. And so this was a great way for me to do that, and I enjoyed it. I did translating of Romans 7, 1 through 9. Translated Romans 1 through 9 from Greek to English, and I'll continue doing that. But also spent time in Daniel. I didn't mention it this morning, but next week we're going to start a series in Daniel, and I spent a lot of time, read through Daniel 7 times, translated the first 4 chapters of Daniel, and I'm still working on that, but just so did a lot of things that not only blessed my soul, but also will be benefit to the church in the weeks and months, years to come, hopefully. So, boy, there's so much more I could say. We wanted you to see the pictures and hear about our trips, but it was so good for my soul. I can't even, I even said to somebody this morning, I didn't realize how much I needed a sabbatical until I was in it. And it was so powerful for me to be able to do these things and to have just that rest, and rest, not just physical rest, but that spiritual rest, and to just be nourished in all of these ways. And I hope and I pray that what God did in me through this time will also then be shown and will be a benefit to you. That was my prayer every day, that God would work and would work in this church. So please, if you have any questions, want to know more, or if you still, I know some people still have concerns about the whole sabbatical idea. I would love to talk about that. I'm not offended if you think that sabbatical's dumb and shouldn't happen. Let's talk more. For those, thank you. I just want to end with that. Thank you. Your support in so many different ways. What a gift. What a gift to me. I am a different person. I'm a different person because I went through this, and I think it's all for the better. I am so grateful to God for the opportunity, and so grateful to you, our church family, for the support that you gave us, and just the gift it was to be able to spend all this time together this summer, and time I got to spend on my own with the Lord as well.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say that too. Like, I just kept thinking, I can't believe I get to do this with you, right? And so you all made that possible, that I could go with Todd and that we could experience that together, because that doesn't always happen on sabbaticals. No. The summer was not a sabbatical for me, but it was amazing for Todd. And yeah, while we were gone, we just kept saying every day, like, I can't even believe we get to do this. And we just were so amazed. And are so amazed by your generosity and your support. And Todd really was, like, I think he said this, but when pastors get to the end of a sabbatical, sometimes they feel refreshed and ready to go. Sometimes they're dreading going back to work and they're not ready yet. And what God did for for Todd, like, he couldn't wait. Like, you should have seen his face that last week he had just by himself a few days. And he was like, I want to start today. Like, and it was just Thursday. And he had to wait until Monday. And he just was just ready, just so ready to minister to you and with you again. So really thankful for that.
Yep. Thankful to God for all that. So thank you. All right. Yeah, we've kept you long enough, but if you have questions you want to ask us individually, we'd be happy to talk more. Thank you so much.